So we'll get going. Thank you, everybody, for coming. All the people that have been with us for a long time, all the people that are new. It's wonderful to see so many people, 82 people. That's fantastic. For those of you who are new and don't know me, I'm Lisa Herrick, and I founded 31st Street. I kept saying it was 8 years ago, but one of my co-leaders said, it's not 8 years ago, it's 9 years ago. So we have been in existence. We are finishing our ninth year. So that's sort of inspiration in itself that we're going to be a decade next year in the new year. This is our fourth fundraiser of 2025 and the last one of the year. And we anticipate doing a number of them in 2026. So we're just alive and kicking. There's been some good news, there's been some hard news, but we are here no matter what. I want to thank all of our ambassador co-hosts for inviting your guests and encouraging them to come or at least donate. Here is a list of you all. So we are very, very appreciative. These events really rest on the shoulders of ambassadors, and that is the way we do this, and it works beautifully thanks to all of you. So we very much appreciate your doing that for us. Tonight we are going to hear from Aaron Lehman, who's from the Iowa Farmers Union. We're going to hear from Shawn Phetteplace and Richard Trent from Main Street Alliance, also in Iowa. You're going to hear from Jim Shelton, as usual, about just sort of the state of things and why we're doing Iowa. And we hope that you'll be inspired to donate. Our efforts are just state by state, step by step. We do not get discouraged because we are doing what we can do. And when we wake up in the morning and feel depressed, I myself just say to myself, I'm part of 31st Street. We're powerful together, and it gets me through the day, every day. So very much appreciate all of you being here. I'm just going to turn it over to Jim.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. Terrific starting us off. Yeah, a few of you may not know me. I'm the political analyst for 31st Street and retired epidemiologist and public health physician. And I really rely on showing slides to try to get across ideas to people, including some data. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to set the stage for our great speakers that are going to be talking about the great work they're going to be doing in Iowa. So, all right. So now who knows what this is? This is not Iowa.
Tennessee 7.
Yeah, there you go. The clue might be Nashville. But the reason I'm doing this is Tuesday night. All those blue arrows, almost all of them, are rural counties in Tennessee and averaging in the low double digits of the shift. That's what those blue arrows are. That shows the big shifts that we can see in rural areas and among other voters. So that's why we're in great shape, in my opinion, for the midterms. However, we have to do the work now. So that introduction. And another piece of data. There are a number of these out here. This one is maybe a little more optimistic than some, but it shows what's called the generic ballot, the preference for Democratic candidates of 7%. That's like what we were in 2018 when I had a blue wave. And we can do that again. And that's why we need to take the opportunity now, not just for the House, but for the Senate. So we've been doing a lot of talking and paying attention to the Senate as well. And to do that overall, just want to take the opportunity to talk about our overall strategy, which is that we have these three infrastructure, we call them pillars of social marketing, grassroots groups, and Democratic state and county parties. And these three states of Iowa, Alaska, and Nebraska, that, have not really been on people's radar screen that much, but they should be. And we're kind of getting out in front, and we need to try to turn these states bluish. And I think there are other reasons why we're doing this, which I'll get to as well. And getting back to the Senate, we can win the Senate. It's possible. But we can't do it with the sort of the current conventional map, or at least it's very unlikely. So we need four additional seats, and you can see the prospects as I see them, pretty good, excellent, good in North Carolina and Maine, though can't depend upon it. The other two we definitely cannot depend upon, and we have to also defend four states where we have incumbents or open seats, Democratic seats. So it's going to take something to win the Senate. But things are the wind is so much blowing in our way that we can do it. And as I like to say, what we need is more shots on goal, for hockey or soccer fans, for example. And that means, more states. One other thing to point out is that we really have no choice other than to reach out into some of these other states going forward toward 2030 and beyond, because the projections are that we will lose a net of 9 blue seats to red state seats, notably Texas and Florida. That means, House seats, but it also means electoral college seats. So again, we have no choice but to try to get a realignment in some of these other states that are sort of red to purple. We need to make them blue to purple. And that brings us to Iowa. So why are we supporting Iowa infrastructure? So just to digress a little bit, our election system is so top heavy with the high marquee candidates, and it's so late date election cycle heavy, when the best investments are really like right now in infrastructure so that we can win in November. And all three of these states, but notably in Iowa, is what I call a Super Bowl election with a U.S. Senate seat, 2 to 3 House seats, and 2 of those House seats are very promising, in my opinion. Governor's race, that's very promising. Multiple other races, notably, I guess, 3/4 of the legislature. And infrastructure helps, any of these races. That's the advantage when you do this. I'm not saying every single dollar you contribute helps every single race, but it does help races across the board. Iowa particularly has been hurt by MAGA policies, especially in the rural areas. That's why I show that. See, we don't get rural polling. Polling, you get other kinds of demographic. You don't get rural urban because it's very hard to sort of sort that out. So that's why that sort of voting behavior is a very key sign. It turns out also, and I think we're going to hear a little more about this, the state governance, which is all red in Iowa, has not been popular at all. It's for the wealthy and so forth. And the anti-incumbent bias is going to help us at that level. There's some encouraging polling. I don't want to exaggerate it, but what I've seen is actually very promising. And we did have these 2 state Senate elections that were in heavy red Trump country. The one we weighed in was with Caitlin Dray, you may remember. And we won those elections. Of course, they're special elections, and that's a special situation. But it does point in our direction. Again, other people have not really been focusing on these states. They're focusing on California, and North Carolina. That's great. That's fine. But we need to get some balance. And I guess the point I made before is we have to be weighing in Iowa and states like that going forward, or our goose is cooked. So, why the Iowa Farmers Union and Main Street Alliance? Well, you'll hear from these folks, of course. But we've done our due diligence and we've convinced that they're really great opportunities. Obviously, farmers and small business people in a place like Iowa are key to the communities that we need to reach out to. So I hope that's pretty clear. Um, but also, you'll see they're highly committed and they're very competent. They need help. So they're pretty small and they like to say they fight above their weight. But we want to make it so that, they're at a higher weight and they can fight above that weight. And early support is key. That's why we're doing this in December. We don't wait. We keep our foot on the gas. So, um, a word about the funding. So our goal was $200,000. I'm happy to say you have raised $104,000. So we're a little bit over halfway there, thanks to you folks. And that's going to be $100,000 for each of the two organizations. Now, let me explain a little bit that we are raising C4 and C3 money. C3, the tax deductible money. You may have seen that in the invitation. We'd rather raise C4 money if it's all the same to you. So that's what this event is about. But you can contact me if you want to donate some C3 money. The other reason we're talking about C4 today is because it allows us a little more latitude in what we talk about in a more partisan way. So there's a donation link in the chat. But there's one more wrinkle, which is there's something called a donor table in many of these states. And the one in Iowa is called the Alliance for a Better Iowa. And we're using them, or they're collaborating with us to be the vehicle such that we're donating the money to them, and then they're going to split the money 50-50 between these two organizations. So I hope that works for people. I hope that's reasonably clear. Anyway, I think that brings us to our great guests. And so it's going to be over to Aaron Lehman, the president of the Iowa Farmers.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. We are very happy to be here. Again, my name is Aaron Lehman. I am a farmer from near Alleman, Iowa, in the center of the state. I grow corn, soybeans, oats, and hay, both in an organic operation and a conventional operation. I'm the fifth generation on their farm. I farm with my son, who's a beginning farmer and represents the sixth generation on our farm. And that's very exciting for us. We farm because we have a passion to grow things that feed our community and feed our world. And we want to do that in a way that makes our neighborhood and our state a better place. And I'm lucky enough, I get to serve as the president of the Iowa Farmers Union. Also on our call this evening is Matt Russell, our executive director. He has been an excellent addition to our team, and we are very excited about where we're going. We make up over about 1,100 members spread across the state. We advocate for family farming, for sustainable agriculture, for thriving rural communities, and a healthy landscape. And we strive for a more just and equitable food system. We have dedicated organizations in the C3 area and the C5 space, and we work in community here in Iowa. We're in coalition with lots of folks, and one of our great partners is Main Street folks who are on the call tonight. We also serve as the fiscal agent for the Food System Coalition, a very exciting group, up and coming coalition in Iowa, and also for the Iowa Alliance for Renewable Agriculture. And we have deep connections with our labor partners. I'm going to go ahead and share just a little bit, Jim, if I could. Here. So we know that our farmers have had an incredibly tough time. The impact of this administration has been hitting our farmers hard, hitting our rural communities hard. One of those areas is right now. We're facing massive healthcare cost increases. Not only are farmers trying to figure out how to pay the bill, but those extra costs for ACA policies, along with the biggest Medicaid cuts in history, are really putting our rural hospitals and clinics on the brink. And every farmer's story is different. We understand that. My own family is looking at the cost of our own insurance to double for what it cost us for the same policy last year. That has been a devastating impact on farmers in rural communities. We know the food insecurity issues are a huge issue in rural areas, often a bigger issue than it is in the general public. You know, our farmers are farmers because they like to grow food and they like to feed people. And because of that, we just find it so inexcusable that our nutrition programs have been, that we grow food for, have been used as a political weapon. And that's just unacceptable. And of course, our USDA cuts and staff shortages have made it much, much harder to have a farmer-public partnership to do what we need to do to get cleaner water and a healthier landscape. You know, the farmer demand for these programs has always been very, very strong, and even more than the program availability. But the current policy is making it harder than ever, not only with program cuts, monies that we will never get back, but on the ground implementation and technical assistance, all those things that farmers need in order to get things like cover crops and diverse rotations or rotational grazing and others, all those things to get to cleaner water downstream. It's harder and harder to get on the ground where they can make a real difference. And of course, this is happening at the same time our farmers are growing our main crops here in Iowa. We're growing them at a loss because of the trade chaos. And now some products are moving across our border, but the damage has been done. And already our largest customers overseas have already filled their bins with cheaper grain from farmers from other countries because of this trade chaos. So we indeed have a lot that we're dealing with right now. So a big part of our work is to elevate farmers and progressive rural leaders and elevate them as trusted messengers for progressive policies in rural Iowa. Elevate them to move the needle towards more progressive candidates. And we've been stepping into this space through our local, state, and national media. Our member, Beth Hoffman from Lavilia, is here speaking about higher ACA premiums. Berlene Wohlbeater of Tama was featured on the CBS Evening News to talk about chaotic trade policies and the impact on family farm livestock producers. And this is a picture of me on the front page of the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. The article entitled, "In Trump-Friendly Iowa, the President's Policies Have Hit Hard." So elevating our farmer voices, our trusted messengers, is done with a great team here at the Iowa Farmers Union. And the investments in the Farmers Union and I would elevate each of these team members to a full-time status. You know, this is really important here in Iowa. We want to bring this team to work hard in a couple of those races that Jim was talking about. We know that the great, and I'll just speak on this a little bit more in detail. We know from the great research done by our friends at Rural Democracy Initiative and others, that grassroots organizing at the local level has a great impact in our rural communities. You know, and to put it simply, the narratives from trusted local messengers tend to resonate loudly and in our rural communities. It builds on that strategy that we listen first, we build relationships, we strengthen those connections, and then we take action and build power. And when we do that at the local level, it starts from the bottom of the ballot and moves up. And we're prepared to do that in Iowa, in the Iowa Farmers Union, through our endorsement process and through our listening and connecting process. And let me illustrate what the real impact of that is. So in one of our districts in Iowa, the one that we were talking about, the Iowa 1st Congressional District, just to give a little bit of review, that Republican Marion Miller Meeks won the district by only 6 votes in 2020. She won very close election since. The last one was only 800 votes out of over 400 votes cast. So a very, very close seat. In this district and other districts, we've seen some real signs that our rural organizing efforts are starting to pay off. And I'll illustrate that. In 2024, Christine Bohannon, the progressive Democrat in the race, outperformed the top of the party's ticket in all 20 of the district counties. Now, that's not too surprising, considering Trump won the district easily. What's interesting is to look at where the Democratic candidate Bohannon, who's running again, outperformed the top of her party's ticket the most. Of the 20 counties in the district, 2 are considered urban, and 2 of those urban, and in those 2 urban counties, Bohannon outperformed the part of the party's ticket by 4.9%. In other words, she did about 5% better than Harris did. In the 18 rural counties, Bohannon outperformed the top of the ticket by 10.7%. In other words, she outperformed the top of her ticket more than twice as much in the rural counties than in the urban counties. And remember, this is a district where she lost by only 800 votes. But we have to, what does that mean? In those counties, in those communities, with some real rural engagement that starts from a place down on the ballot, deeply in those communities, it has a real impact as we move up into the larger races. And just as an update with the Farmers Union, I have our annual meeting that's taking place in Ames tomorrow, and we have a candidate forum, and we have an excellent set of candidates coming. It's just for the federal candidates here in Iowa. That means the U.S. Senate race, which is an open seat, the Congressional District 1, where Bohannon lost by only 800 votes, Congressional District 2, which is an open seat with Representative Hinson running for Senate, Congressional District 3, where Representative Nunn narrowly won last time and is struggling mightily, and then Congressional District 4, where that seat is open as well. We invited all the leading candidates from both parties, and we have confirmed that participating tomorrow, all but one of the leading Democratic candidates is going to be with us in person, building those connections with our farmers at our Iowa Farmers Union Convention. The one Senate Democratic candidate who had a conflict and couldn't join us, he was with us at our summer picnic last summer and did a fantastic job connecting with our farmers. We're really excited about the energy that's going to be in that room tomorrow. The investment in the Farmers Union allows us to counterbalance the conservative leading farm groups in the state. We know that a number of farm groups nationally and in Iowa have made their conservative leanings very clear in this administration. And even when the administration does things that clearly hurts the interests of their constituents and their farmers, they have gone along with it or stayed very quiet. That's not us. Our members have been standing up to these destructive qualities. Yes. And they've been standing up to these policies from the inauguration day, and we haven't stopped since. So I'm going to move on here. So instead of pitting rural versus urban, we're building connections across the food system and across the demographics. And instead of targeting our diverse population to gain political points, we're building connections across the food system because our communities are stronger when we do that for our food system that relies on a diverse workforce. Okay, I'm going to move on. This is where we think the return is. We think it's new members. We think it's leveraged Iowa investment. We think it means more trusted messengers, farmer messengers, trusted rural messengers, greater earned media narratives, and all leading up to real results with progressive candidates in Iowa. And with that, I'll pause. But just to wrap up, a huge thank you for allowing us to share the work that we're doing here in Iowa and about some of the exciting opportunities that are moving ahead.
Thank you so much. That was great. It's really wonderful to get just sort of concrete data and concrete information. And we will have time for Q&A after all of our speakers. So please continue to put your questions in the chat. So we're now going to hear from Shawn Phetteplace and Richard Trent, and they represent Main Street Alliance, a different group in Iowa.
Cool. Richard, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll kick us off and let you do the lion's share. But I wanted to just hop on for a second and say thank you for giving a damn, and also thank you for focusing on the right thing. There's so much disinformation and misinformation thrown our way, that you're in this call means that you've picked the right battle, because Iowa is very interesting. I had the pleasure of going to Iowa and connecting with some of our small business owners there. And I learned driving around with Sue Dinsdale of Iowa Citizen Action. Iowa is consistently is ranked as one of the worst economies in the United States. It also has some of the highest rates of cancer because of runoff from farms and all these different things. I don't think that's a coincidence that the state with some of the worst health outcomes also has one of the most languishing economies. And it's because since 2008, Main Street Alliance has recognized that you can't have thriving local economies when people are sick, dying, and can't access health care. That's how Main Street Alliance got our start, organizing small business owners in places like Maine and Vermont and the Pacific Northwest back in 2008 to say, you know what would make our main streets more vibrant, what would make our economies a lot more dynamic? If everybody was healthy enough to come to work tomorrow, if everyone could actually afford health insurance for their families. And so a lot of the work that we're doing, it feels like it's coming full circle and coming back to Iowa. So we're excited to be there. We're excited to grow our small business network in Iowa. We've got 30,000 members across the country, and a fast growing population of small business owners all throughout Iowa. And here's the thing about small business owners. They're the most trusted messengers in the entire country. And farmers, by the way, Aaron, farmers are small business owners, right? And these folks have skin in the game. They're rooted organizers, right? So they don't parachute in a couple days before an election and leave the day after. They've got real skin in the game here. And they're evergreen validators for the policies that actually matter for our local economies. And both parties have used small business owners as props without actively trying to organize them in an intentional way. And that's where Main Street Alliance comes in. That's where your support comes in. And we're unbelievably grateful for you just paying attention and listening and hearing us out to what we have to say. Super grateful and excited to have you on our side. I'll turn it over to you, Shawn. Now I've got to go wrangle two toddlers. Wish me luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. And I am gonna share my screen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. My name is Shawn Phetteplace. I live not far from Iowa. I'm just over the border here in Wisconsin, and I'm the National Campaigns Director for the Main Street Alliance, Main Street Action, and Main Street Action PAC. And so excited to share a little bit about what we're up to and what we're looking to do in Iowa. So first off, just to reiterate some of what Richard said, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but things are rough in Iowa, and it is rated as the worst economy in the country. Their GDP growth it actually retracted by 6%, and part of that's tariffs. Part of that is, frankly, failed leadership. For Governor Kim Reynolds, the governor there, the incumbent Republican. It was a little surprising to me when she decided to not run for re-election. But then I looked it up and she's the least popular governor in the country. Literally, she's negative 12%. And so there's been a lot that hasn't been going well in terms of policy in the state for quite some time. To what Richard said, public health is becoming a major issue in the state. This is not so much a small farm issue, but big farm issue, big ag. There's been a lot of runoff and a lot of issues contributing to really high cancer rates. And when you have poor public health infrastructure, that makes it even worse. And so you have that combined with tariffs. My understanding, and I'm not a farmer, so I'll defer to the farmers union on ag issues. What I will say is soybean farms are really prevalent in Iowa, and they've been hugely impacted by a lot of the issues regarding tariffs, but also, frankly, the Trump administration bailing out Argentina and Argentina selling their soybeans to China. It's just like it's sort of like insult to injury a bit. The other thing that's really important to know about Iowa is that for a long time, sort of the progressive community, a lot of the infrastructure, the organizing infrastructure in the state, flowed through the Democratic Party because of the caucus. And they lost the caucus for a variety of reasons a couple years back. And so there's not as much sort of outside political infrastructure in the state that you would expect because so much flowed through that in the past. There's a lot of good work happening, including Jamie Birch Elliott, which Jim mentioned to earlier. But there's a lot of opportunity there to build out more progressive infrastructure in the state, and that really presents a lot of opportunities for organizing. This is Abby Paxton. She's a small business owner in the Des Moines area, and she's been speaking out about cuts to healthcare. And so we're working to expand in Iowa. We've had a history in the state, and Sue Dinsdale, who's with Iowa Citizen Action, she's a 1,000 Main Street champion. She's helping us to really revitalize a lot of our network in the state in Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, and Cedar Falls. And so this is actually a picture from a meetup. I've been to Iowa twice in the past couple of months, organizing with folks all across the state. And we have some pretty notable businesses that are part of our network already in Iowa. Raygun, for those who are not familiar, definitely Google them. They have a lot of really great t-shirts that I think a lot of folks on this call would really enjoy. They're based in Des Moines, but they have 11 stores, including many throughout Iowa. You also have Rashonda Young in Waterloo, which if you Google Rashonda Young, the heist, she is a woman who was discriminated against for lending for her business in Waterloo, and she actually decided, you know what, I'm just going to make my own bank, which is what she's doing. And she is an absolute badass organizer in that community as well. So we have some infrastructure already in the state, but we need help deepening that infrastructure. And so, what will your money be spent on? It'll be spent on hiring somebody. We really need somebody to do sort of the work of the one-on-ones, the house meetings, the infrastructure building. Sue is amazing, and that Sue will work with this person, but it's also she has a lot on her plate, and having somebody who can do those one-on-ones, do those house meetings all throughout the state is really important. I started with MSA about 5 years ago. In the first 2 years that I was on staff, I did 2,000 meetings with small business owners in Wisconsin. And we need somebody with that same drive and that same motivation to build out our infrastructure in the Hawkeye State. And so that's what the money will be spent on primarily is hiring somebody to do that work. And with the amount that's been discussed to be committed, that would be literally exactly the amount that we need between salary, benefits, and like travel costs and other things that would be needed for that person. Des Moines, or sorry, Iowa rather, is a very big state, so it takes some time to get to places, and so having those funds to cover gas is important. I would say it's going to help us build the infrastructure. It's going to help us build an infrastructure for local political power and driving the media narrative around the key issues that are impacting folks in the area. So, why us? Why Main Alliance? We have proven ourselves. We actually, since April, nationally, our member stories, whether it's in local news, whether it's national news, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, whatever, we've been really working to help set the narrative around healthcare and tariffs federally. And over 50 million people have seen those stories. We did an analysis actually of our press clips and other things, and that's a big part of this work is helping to set that narrative. The other is that we have proven ourselves to get results. We were able to help get paid family medical leave passed in Minnesota, which is actually going to affect literally later this month. $300 million for childcare in Wisconsin. We work to help to drive COVID relief programs federally and at the state level. And we fundamentally, what I would say is the Chamber of Commerce and the National Federation of Independent Business, which by the way was co-founded by Karl Rove. There's a lot of this infrastructure of right-wing business groups in this country that are lying. They're lying to their own members. They're lying to the public about what's best for business. And so for us, we're able to counter that with an infrastructure and a different voice to really drive the narrative around those issues. And what I would say as well is that we have sort of the C3 component, which can be also C4 dollars can be used for for that infrastructure building. But the other thing that we're doing is we're holding the members of Congress accountable in Iowa. So Mariette Miller Meeks, as the Farmers Union folks mentioned, she is one of the most endangered folks in the House. You also have Zach Nunn, who seems desperate to lie about his past support for cutting healthcare. He's been trying to say that he's for extending the subsidies. Well, we'll see if it actually happens. And then you have the second congressional district as well, which is an open seat where there's a strong Democrat running, where in that district, frankly, Abby Finkenauer was a Democrat who represented that district not that long ago. And so we are hard at work, and this is what we're focused on right now, holding them accountable for their cuts for healthcare. So as of Monday, we're actually going up on billboards in the first district and the third district with this messaging around the fact that they cut our healthcare. And we are working really hard to pressure them both to support an extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, but if they don't, hold them accountable at the ballot box. And so the work that we do building this infrastructure around these issues will be very easily transferable to the electoral work that we do, driving a media narrative around small business, around organizing in these communities as we go into November. And so that's a bit about us, a bit about the work that we do and where your money would go. And just would really appreciate any support to be able to help do that, be able to flip the House, hopefully be able to flip the Senate, and be able to hold this president accountable.
Thank you so much, Shawn and Richard. Really appreciate your coming and sharing all the information. It's very helpful to have a PowerPoint so we can sort of track all the information that you're giving us. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Before we open it to Q&A, I'm just going to turn the mic over to Mary Pence, our fundraising leader, for a few words.
Hi, I'm Mary Pence. And so after all of that information and inspiration, I'd like you to focus with me for a moment on where we've been and where we're going. Do you remember November of 2024? You likely recall exactly where you were when you realized that there were going to be another terrible, unbelievable 4 years. I remember my own despair and disbelief that night. And then I ask you to remember with me November 4th of this year. Our elation that the election results were so much better than any of us expected. And now we are in the valley between that election and the election in November of 2026. We have really a lot of reasons to be optimistic, to be hopeful, to the extent that we aren't buried under the unrelenting burden of day after day of terrible, horrible things happening. And so despite this roller coaster, we know that we cannot relent, that we cannot stop putting our all into the crucial fight to save our democracy, that it will take hard work to win the critical races in that election. I believe that 31st Street's three-state, three-pillar strategy to take back the U.S. Senate in 2026 is far-sighted and well-founded. I believe that the funds that we raise tonight for these really impressive on-the-ground groups in Iowa will make a difference. So I'm asking each of you to harness the inspiration from tonight's presenters to inspire yourself to make the most significant contribution you can. You know, every one of us on this call have differing financial circumstances. But it all adds up, the big contributions and the small contributions. What I'm asking tonight is that you stretch to make a significant contribution, whatever that is for you. For my husband Dan and me, that amount is $4,000. We contribute it really gladly, confident in the knowledge that these two groups are going to put our dollars to good use. And, I get it. Not everybody can contribute at the level that we're able to. But if you can, would you please join us in thinking big, in thinking about what you can give to get us to our goal of $200,000? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Now I'm turning it over to Aaron Hamburger, who is going to curate our questions.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for those great words, Mary. And can everyone hear me? Hear me okay? Awesome. So I'm going to curate the questions that we have for our two speakers, Shawn and Aaron, the other Aaron. So not to confuse anybody. One of the big questions that was coming up was how do you expect to use the money that we're hoping to raise, which I think was addressed pretty much at length by our speakers. But I just think it's worth kind of reiterating this idea of hiring staff and hiring staff now. November of 2026 is too late to donate to affect the outcome of that election. If we want to affect it, we've got to get our skin in the game now to set up the infrastructure so that these people can do the good work that they're doing on the ground. So I just think that that's a really good point to drive home. Okay, next question. How do you know your message is resonating? And I noticed that you're doing a variety of communication methods like billboards, digital ads, texting 30,000 folks in each district with your messaging with a call to action to contact reps on healthcare. So how do you know your message is effective, and how do you change your vehicles to communicate with people if maybe one's not working? So maybe whoever wants to start, maybe Aaron first and then Shawn.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. The one of the best ways that we get to get feedback is from our folks in the country who are talking with their neighbors. They're talking with them at church functions. They're talking about school functions. They're talking about the local co-op. They're running into them when they're purchasing inputs for next year. And the feedback that they get in those conversations is very honest. It's very frank. It's very practical. And that is a very effective way for us to understand, what the real feel is on the ground for people in their communities. And that certainly helps us understand where people are at and drives how we set up our work. And of course, rural organizing, a critical piece is to listen and to set up those opportunities to listen. We want, we're going through a huge policy process in the next couple of days at our annual meeting. So we kind of have this idea of all these policies we want to advance. And we always have to ground that by saying, what are the opportunities we are putting in place for people to listen and have those frank conversations with one another. And once we put that step in first, it seems all the rest of the pieces start to fall in line. I'll stop there and we can go into more detail if we need to.
Okay, Shawn?
Yeah, what I'll say is I'm very much a data nerd. I believe that you should measure everything. I do think that the relational work can be a little bit trickier from time to time, but I think it's incredibly important in terms of having folks who know each other, talking to each other about these issues and about the elections. And that's definitely something is interesting with small business owners is that, normally when you think about relational voting programs, it's people with like their friends and family, but with businesses, they have their customers and they're trusted by their customers. And so some folks will feel comfortable using some more partisan messaging. Some folks will be comfortable doing more general voter engagement, but either way, they're helping move the needle. I would say billboards are a little harder to measure, but they're so cheap. Like, you can do a digital billboard for a month for like $5,000, and it reaches. We currently are up in a district in western Wisconsin, which borders Iowa, and for $5,000, we reached 2.4 million people over the course of 2 months. And so but digital is very easy to measure. You can see what the impressions are, you can see who saw it. If you have a call to action, those folks fill out their contact information, so we can very easily track that. And we have worked with an organization in Virginia. We worked in Virginia this last election. By the way, we also support Caitlin Dre, who you all supported, and I actually meet with Caitlin next week. I absolutely adore her. I was really inspired by her race. But for that work, so in State Navigate, they did polling with us in Virginia, and we plan on doing polling in Iowa to make sure that the messaging we're using is effective, but also to make sure that the districts that we're operating in, that we're being strategic about where we're investing these funds, because ultimately, that's what it's all about. It's not about vibes, it's about data.
Good way of putting it. Okay, we had a question. What is a digital billboard? I'm assuming that's a billboard that's not just a picture, but can be things could be project.
Yeah, it's like one of those digital billboards you see like on the highway, or
Yeah.
like the thing that's cool about it is that we're able to send a file that has a literal countdown to January 1st when premiums spike by double. And so it's just a little bit more interactive that way. It's also just easier, frankly, than doing a big sort of, paper version. So that's what that is.
Great. Aaron, do you know what percentage of Iowa farmers are members of the union?
And right now, it's a little bit difficult because sometimes we are using different definitions of a farmer, right? Uh, so it's a little bit hard to place the exact number on what percentage are. What we do is we interact with our farmers, we survey them, we learn about them, and so we set sort forth our own criteria for that. In Iowa, we know that just like in the rest of the country, the number of farmers is declining, and that frames a lot of the work we're doing because the economic conditions are such that fewer and fewer people are able to make a living farming. Um, but we also understand that our farmers are bring a pretty trusted messenger to policy issues in their community and across the entire state. So while our numbers are in Iowa, well, we only have about 1,100 members. While estimates are, I won't have the exact number in front of me, but the estimate for the USDA definition of farmer, I think, are around 80,000 in Iowa. All the feedback we get is that those folks have a good space in trying to bring a message forward that's good for their rural communities and for their neighbors, even though they might just be one voice in their community.
Great. Another question that came up was, what is the role/strength of Iowa Farm Bureau versus Iowa Farmers Union? And is there any indication the Iowa Farm Bureau is frustrated with MAGA and might be critical of Trump, or that Bureau members are leaving for the union?
We're getting a lot of frustration. We're sensing a lot of frustration with folks who are tired of being used as by the Farm Bureau, by other conservative-leaning rural groups, when we're not seeing progress. We're not seeing progress in farm vitality. We're not seeing progress in our efforts to clean up the waters of the state of Iowa. We're not seeing progress in any fairness in our marketplace that we're seeing. So we're just hearing a lot of frustration. We're also hearing a lot of frustration that those groups are being extremely quiet while their farmers are losing money every day. And they sense that those organizations are trying to game the political system, even though the interests of their own farmers are at risk. And to be frank, our farmers have really stepped into this space. While some press outlets have reached out to the Farm Bureau and some other conservative-leaning farm groups, the press's calls are not being answered. And these are on fundamental issues, not just on issues on the fringe, but on fundamental issues to farmers and to rural communities. Those folks are not answering calls. And our organization has a culture of stepping forward and taking the role in being good spokespeople for their farm, for their community. And so we've been able to step in that space is in a very strong way that our organization is very proud of.
Great. And we have an update in the chat. So we have raised $125,000 toward our goal of 200,000. Just on this call, I believe when we started this call, we were at around 100,000. So we've raised roughly 20 some odd $1,000 just on this, and it hasn't even been barely been an hour. And hey, we've got a few minutes left, so we could keep pushing that forward. Okay. Another question, actually, and this is actually popping up in the chat. Words like progressive, words like union, what kind of connotations do those have? Might those be a negative? Someone in the chat was saying progressive is not a dirty word when farmers are talking about progressive smart government and Republicans are advancing regressive, stupid public policies. Maybe Shawn, do you want to talk a little bit about words like progressive and union, and maybe Aaron, you want to chime in as well?
Yeah, I would just say that it is more important to have an honest conversation with people than to worry necessarily about labels. I would say the other thing, there's a really great op-ed by Lena Khan, the former FTC chair, about the Mamdani campaign. One thing they did really well was centering the voices of small business owners. In the campaign, they actually had two videos. One was called Halalflation, which was all about like permitting and like a very non-sexy issue, but like really important issue in terms of like the cost to get a business started and all that. And then he also had another video about bodega, but he didn't treat the small business owners as props. Like he actually talked with them, regardless of what people feel about the guy. I think that's one thing they did really well. And Lena Khan in this op-ed talked about small business owners as being a really core constituency, frankly, of the Democratic Party, that the Republican Party is the party of big business and that the Democratic Party is the party of small business. And that's something that really needs to happen in terms of how we message this, how we talk about it. And I think that, when it comes down to it, I think that people get, a little too worked up about using the perfect set of words that will magically do something. It's more about having honest conversations with them about shared values and shared issues, and that should be the focus versus saying the exact right sequence of words.
Mm-hmm. Aaron?
Yeah, Shawn, it is right on the money. I do want to add to, it's our folks, our farmers, our rural folks are often there's often wedge issues that are put in place to try to divide urban versus rural in Iowa, one farmer versus another farmer, one region against one another, consumers against farmers is often a tactic, and clearly we have strength because our interests are aligned with our community and with our labor friends who are deeply impacted in so many similar ways that farmers are. So we want to present a message of unity with working folks, with our citizens in our urban communities, and we think that's so important to bring that message forward and reject the divisiveness that often pits farmers against the rest of their community or against the rest of the state. So that message, keeping that message of unity is important, even though there's a lot of divisive messages being brought out there.
Great, thank you. Now, we at 31st Street, we like to pride ourselves being, starting on time, ending on time, and it is the 8 o'clock hour. So we understand if people, need to roll off at this point. We want to thank everybody who came and thank our guest speakers. We are available to hang out for another 10, 15 minutes or so if people want to chat or have more questions. We will try to get to some of the ones. Linda, I see your question. We'll try to get to some of the questions we haven't yet answered. But for those of you who do need to go, we understand. But thank you for everybody for participating. And I believe the link is in the chat to donate. I'm putting it in there once more, just in case. Okay, so while we have you two, how has the administration's campaign to remove migrants affected Iowa's farmers? Is immigration an issue in Iowa?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. It is a huge issue. So many of our rural communities, our diverse rural communities, have been impacted by these policies that just ripped apart these communities at the same time. Farmers are struggling to find help to harvest a crop, to put a crop into the ground, to grow and to take care of animals, and then to bring that product to the consumer's table. And that just raises the cost for farmers. It raises the cost for consumers. It makes no sense. But again, we understand that this is being used as a device to divide us. So it's so important for us that we stand up for our diverse workforce that we have, and we have always had in Iowa, to grow what we need to grow and to bring our product to the table.
Great. Shawn, any thoughts on immigration as an issue?
I mean, I'll just say this. I mean, definitely defer to the Farmers Union on those particular issues. I'd say more broadly, and this is less relevant maybe to this call, but it's an important thing to know about us as an organization, is we've sued the administration 6 times since January of 2024, 2025, I guess, because they keep breaking the law, whether it's the federal funding freeze, federal layoffs involving Doge. We were part of the case where the IRS was being asked to provide records to ICE, which we opposed because it was a violation of privacy. The recent SNAP case that went to the Supreme Court, we were part of that as well. There's a small business lending rule, and the reason why we're doing those things, A, they keep breaking the law, and B, it's hurting our members. And so we'll continue to fight back against the administration, both in the court of public opinion and in the actual courts. But it's obviously deeply just disturbing to see, to use the F word, the fascist slide that this administration has been taking. And it's up to all of us to help push back and to hold them accountable and to not worry about I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't seen as many people, many organizations. I mean, you have universities, you have other folks who are just like kind of rolling over for the administration, and it's up to all of us to really fight back against that.
Great. Okay, another question. One person was saying, we've been talking about progressive messaging tactics working. Are there any moderate or independent messaging tactics that work with farmers in Iowa?
Yeah, that's a good question, to be honest. I take extremely seriously the idea that we need to work hard to not blame individual farmers for the terrible choices that they're faced with. And too much of the time, we see that rather than coming together with solutions that improve our systems and our institutions that we rely on in rural Iowa, too often of the time we see that divisiveness take place. So, bringing that message together that we are all in this, that we have to work together in order to make a difference, I think is a message that really resonates with folks on both sides of the aisle. So I think everyone understands that it's a very, politicized time, but bringing that message together that we need farmers to be part of the solution really does resonate across both parts of the aisle.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Another question. 31st Street supported Abby Finkenauer back in 2018, we believe. Where is she now? What is the state of her campaign? What's going on with her?
She said we did support her in 2018. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
I remember her.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, Matt, do you want to chime in? If you unmute.
Yeah,
I know that Abby was an ambassador in the Biden administration. So she was working in DC, and I think she was like an ambassador to young people globally or something like that. So she had a role in the Biden administration. I think now she has gotten married, and I think she might have moved to her with her husband to Minnesota, in kind of a rural community there. I think that's where she's at.
Oh, right. Always interesting to find out where people end up landing.
Yep.
Great. Okay. One question was, can you tell us about your 501c3 organization too? So there's the C4 and the C3. What is the difference in terms of what you all do?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So our C3 is where we do a lot of our educational programming. We work really hard to help to provide educational programming to our members about federal issues, helping to connect them with policymakers. We had a call recently on the Affordable Care Act cuts where Leader Jeffries actually joined at the federal level. And a lot of the base building work, a lot of those meetings, a lot of the membership recruitment, a lot of that is within our 501c3. And then our political work in terms of being a little bit more aggressive around things like healthcare tends to flow through our C4. And then we tend to not deploy our PAC until later in the cycle when we tend to not get involved in primaries directly. But that's the vehicle in which we do our direct advocacy for candidates in the general elections. So that's just kind of like how our three entities work. But some of the work we do on the C3 side, if folks are recruited and they become members, then those are folks that we can then mobilize for other activities later in the cycle.
Great. Another question by the way, this is a question that's just coming into me privately in the chat, but is worth addressing to everybody. Contributions can be made later, correct? Yes, I believe you can. I don't know how long the link is active, Jim. Maybe you can enlighten us on that, but I believe it'll be around for at least a little while.
Until we get our goal. Probably.
Yeah, until we beat our goal. So we're at 128. We're trying to get to 200. I mean, it'd be great if we passed 200. But it's definitely going to be around for a little while. So please share with your friends. Aaron, can you talk about, since we're talking about immigration, how do Iowa farmers cope with the reduction in immigrant labor?
Yeah, unfortunately, most farmers are on their farm are in a position where they are at the mercy of a marketplace, right? They mostly are for commodity space, especially. They can't just necessarily say, "Oh, I need to raise the price of what I grow." That's not an option for the vast majority of farmers. So they're tightening their belt. They're cutting back on in any other way they can, whether that is deferring maintenance on important equipment, or putting off investing in the farm in other ways, or bringing a new innovation onto the farm. They're putting those things off. They're putting off decisions to bring the next generation onto the farm, unfortunately, because we have an aging farm population. We need new and beginning farmers. And from a practical space, there are farmers who are saying, well, I guess I cannot grow that particular crop anymore, or in that space anymore. I'm going to have to cut back on growing another item, because the labor isn't there. It really cuts down on the important steps that we take to try to diversify ourselves in Iowa. We had a great need to diversify what we grow in Iowa, but with a labor shortage, it really cuts back on the options farmers have.
Great. Also, another question that just came up in the chat. Will the recording of these presentations be available for us to share with family and friends? Yes, indeed. And the link will be provided in next week's 31st Street newsletter. If you are not receiving the 31st Street newsletters, go to 31ststreet.org. The link is in the chat. Sign up. Make sure you're getting all of our newsletters. The question about the Alliance for a Better Iowa, which is answered in the chat. Jim, I hope you saw the answer to that. Okay, I think that's about it. I think I got to everybody's questions. I'm sorry if I missed something. But anybody else have something else they wanted to ask or chime in? Linda, thank you for your kind note in the chat.
Thank you to our speakers. It's
Yeah.
really terrific.
Really
And
good.
Absolutely. Thank you
Very
so
helpful.
much. Thank you for the work you're
good
doing.
luck with everything.
Yeah.
It's record cold out there too, by the way, guys, in Iowa and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Stay warm. Well, thanks
That's right.
everybody. Have a good night.
Right.